Salvete omnes commuters. 你们好，同学们。I first started trying to write this script on the 2nd of August. Since I am now writing this in December, just after the winter solstice, goddess only knows when this will actually be recorded and uploaded, this should give you an idea of how long I've been struggling to get this done. Let's try and jump into this topic, shall we? There might, from a certain section of the audience, be a slight knee-jerk reaction to the title of this video. If you've been on leftist Twitter for even 5 minutes, which isn't great for anyone's mental health, please take breaks, you'll have seen someone, somewhere, begging someone else to read a book. There is a great emphasis in some circles on the reading of theory, especially in socialist, communist, anarchist circles. Frequently, among potshots from one discipline at another, will be references to some piece of theory from someone that supposedly debunks the entire philosophy of the other discipline. The next day, or a few days later, you'll likely see adherents of the latter discipline taking potshots right back at the original group with references to yet another piece of theory that supposedly debunks or at least answers the previously referenced piece of theory. Both said pieces of theory being all too frequently over 100 years old, or written expressly for academics using needlessly dense, obfuscated terminology that keeps the larger public out, or both. Disturbingly frequently, both. If you particularly like diving into the political areas of the internet, you'll often see the quote from Marx, "Practice without theory is blind, theory without practice is sterile," perhaps more often with a variation, substituting sterile with empty or practice with praxis. But the general flavour of the quote remains the same. This quote even holds true quite a bit and cuts both ways, in that it makes people see the difference between effectively using theory to practice anti-capitalist leftist politics, and either just bickering over theory all day on the internet, or protesting a general injustice with no clear demands or methods of rectifying it. So, if I admit that this quote from Marx has some merit, and I do, why did I title this video "The Importance of Not Reading Theory"? Surely I should be in favour of everyone reading theory. And if you can read, have access to the materials in your native language, do not have learning difficulties, are particularly interested in reading non-fiction, and capable of reading thick academic work from people who didn't agree with Mao's "write so poor people understand" ethos, then please, go ahead, have a ball. I even encourage you to read it aloud in streams, or for videos for YouTube, or for LibriVox, or Audible Anarchist, or any number of similar projects. I think book clubs are fantastic as an idea, and collaborative reading should be highly encouraged. But not everyone can read. Some have learning difficulties and dyslexia, like myself. Some can't find the materials in their native language. Sometimes the books are not scanned, available or even affordable for the average person. Many can be out of print and not available in the numerous internet archives. Some people even struggle to understand non-fiction and academic works even when it's read aloud to them like an audiobook, or struggle to follow along. Learning and developmental delays do not mean these people cannot eventually learn to understand the concepts being expressed in this theory. Delay does not mean never, despite what the British rail system would have you believe. It means eventually in their own time. So if reading theory is not accessible or important, what alternatives do we have available for education so that the mass movement can build mass and have informed praxis? Well, here comes another phrase frequently quoted. Each one, teach one. Each one, teach one does not mean sharing an audiobook playlist of theory books that are on lists of important 101 theory books, although a shout out to the Twitter user who did just that for me. It is appreciated even if this video seems to send a different message. Also, a shout out to the YouTube channel Socialism for All, who, despite being problematic in some ways on Twitter, aren't we all, and perhaps occasionally disparaging of anarchism, at least includes frequent commentary and explainers in their reading of theory book videos, which can help in learning of theory. No, each one teach one means just that. You learn the theory, then you teach it to others, even if it's just one other person. This is especially an important point for YouTubers that consider themselves educational channels in the leftist political sphere. Don't give your students book reading assignments as homework. That's not teaching them theory. That's assuming they have the same aptitude, skills, and access that you do. By all means, cite theory books. This could be very important. Cite page, paragraph, and line, so people can search out particular points of interest more easily rather than just recommending a 600-plus page book written for sophomore college students. Try to remember that even books that were intended for a larger public audience by certain academics can still be written in a manner that means they're not accessible to the larger public audience. But most of all, teach the actual ideas. Suss out the meaning of the theory, the central thesis. Break it down several times with different examples, and provide them in video, stream, or blog, or pamphlet form, whatever your preference. If you can break it down to fit within a Twitter post, more power to you. Draw real-life examples. Don't repeat yourself using the exact same example for the same concept 6 times in a row, or someone will start throwing coats and rolls of linen at you and you deserve it. If you can't break down the theory to be able to explain it to someone else in as simple a way as possible, it's entirely possible you need to reread the theory because you don't fully understand it yourself. Just telling someone to go read the book if they didn't understand your example isn't helpful. It's not the fault of the student when they don't understand. It's the fault of the teacher. And as harsh and acerbic as I have actually been up to this point, this next bit is perhaps going to be the most harsh, but one leftist YouTubers may need to hear the most. If you can't teach theory without resorting to referring people to go read the books for themselves, if you think you can't fully get across at least the essence and central point of the theory, if you are physically and mentally capable of anything else at all, you shouldn't be using teaching as your praxis. Go do something else you're more suited to. Let someone else take over and get a foot on the rung who is better at it than you are. Maybe set up a community garden or shop instead. Volunteer with a local community group. Post, non-compromising, pictures of strikes you're in or community praxis you're doing. Show praxis that isn't either just discussing theory or likely to get you thrown in jail. But don't bicker on Twitter or teach theory poorly and believe that counts as praxis. Not if you are capable of doing anything at all else. This isn't to say you shouldn't do anything. You absolutely should. Please actually do things, provided they are within your skill set and abilities to do so. You're valid. This is not trying to shove you out of the movement. Say you're not a real socialist, communist, anarchist, fill in the blank, or whatever. It's just an attempt to suggest that you look at the most optimum form of activism you can do to help the movement as a whole. We can't all teach, we can't all do propaganda, we can't all march, but we don't have to, because there is more than just one of us out there. That's the whole beauty of there being a movement. This might seem hypocritical slacktivism by some. I, however, am not physically or mentally capable of anything else, or I'd be doing it. This is all I can do, and barely at that, which is why I'm trying to amplify the voices of people who can do it well to a larger audience whenever I can, or just give the perspective of someone disabled where it's missing. I'm not trying to take up eyes, ears and brains of people I cannot expose to useful information without referring them to third parties they cannot access. I'm trying to not take up a space that I have any means of leaving free for someone else better equipped. I'm not asking you to disappear. I'm just asking you to think, is this the best I can do? Honestly, without judging yourself too harshly. If you can teach, please do, and give others the means to teach better themselves. But please don't ask them to try and make it through Marx or Lenin on their own to fully understand. The lesson is not the exact words, it's the spirit of the meaning behind them. Finding new words to express them doesn't destroy the lesson itself. Until next time, Vale Kimitis, 再见。